Good evening, and welcome to another Facebook Live session with myself. I'm Dr. Ari Yaris here at the Innovative Dad. For those of you that have not had a chance to watch one of these before, I'm a licensed psychologist here in the Washington, D.C. area, and I provide parent coaching services to parents both locally and virtually. Wanted to take tonight to talk about a little bit of a difficult topic, that has clearly been in the news, and that is how to talk to our kids about lockdown drills and active shooter drills. These rather potentially anxiety-provoking moments, and I'm speaking to you on the heels today of the student walkout that took place in protest of gun violence. Just a month after the Parkland shootings. And I want to talk about how to deal with this necessary evil that has entered our kids' lives. Most of us that are parents today, we're too young to remember the duck and cover drills that our parents or maybe our older siblings might have experienced in school. And the threat of Soviet missiles raining down on top of us. And I have to imagine that at that time, those events were just as anxiety-provoking as the idea of drilling for an active shooter possibility. And as a former principal, I've certainly been involved in creating these scenarios, both as a drill and exercise within the school, and then also at a management level, of working through different scenarios and understanding our responses as an institution. And it has always been an incredibly sobering experience for me each time that I had to undergo that kind of an exercise. So let's start with just sort of a basic definition of what are we talking about with a lockdown drill. Now, these are different than fire drills. Fire drills is something that we're all sort of used to. It's part of popular culture. That alarm goes off, and it is a signal for everybody to get out of the building and gather at an organized rally spot, usually somewhere out in the field, so that you're out of the way of the fire trucks. So a lockdown drill consists of attempting to hide and secure all of the people within the building, generally in the event of an intruder. They're also sometimes called an active shooter drill. Probably a better name for this, and something that I'm hearing first responders use, is shelter in place. With the idea of seeking refuge within the building in the most appropriate and safest location that you have access to. And this makes sense because it takes the context of the lockdown drill out of just being something that you do to prepare for an active shooter entering your building, to the other kinds of emergency responses that you might need for a weather-related problem. You would shelter in place if a tornado was approaching your school, utility issues in a portion of your building, or some other similar type of scenario. Generally, as a rule of thumb, during a lockdown drill or a shelter-in-place drill, classroom doors are secured, they're locked, kids are kept away from doors and windows, and everybody needs to be silent. Usually lights are dimmed. The idea is to say, if somebody is in the building, there's nobody home in here, there's no target of opportunity for you to be looking at. And you can, needless to say, this scenario of, okay, let me stay huddled away from the window, in the wall, possibly in the closet of the classroom, or somehow out of sight, is incredibly anxiety producing. And we're telling our kids that in order to stay safe, they need to be silent during this time. Many schools are doing things to help prep children for these kinds of situations and to help them understand, and have counselors and school psychologists on staff to support the education staff in prepping kids for this. But I wanted to take this time this week to talk about what we can do as parents to help prep our kids for this. So let's talk for a little bit tonight about how we can communicate to our children in prepping for the lockdown drills that are going to be part of school safety routines for the conceivable near future. So let's start with just the simple fact that we are dealing with a preventative strategy for a low probability incident. Be honest with your kids and say that, it's not likely that a stranger is going to come into the building who doesn't belong and wants to hurt us. But these drills are in place for a serious reason, and kids are going to ask what they're for, and they might then ask that next question. Well, what kind of unsafe stuff that are the adults in my life trying to protect me from? And be clear that the school is trying to keep your child safe from other people who might be making poor choices. And poor choices is something that our kids do understand because they see people make poor choices. And you may want to tell them that, sometimes people do things that we don't understand or things that we would never do. And just, start at that point. You want to emphasize that having a plan is important, that we have plans for lots of situations like snow days and really bad storms or the power going out. You may want to reference some of the emergency plans that you have in your own home. In terms of well, this is where we keep the emergency numbers on our refrigerator. If there's ever a problem, this is the number for poison control. Here's 911. This is where the first aid kit is. It's a good way to sort of let them know that we think about these things at home as well. You may also want to connect the idea of having a plan to being like wearing your bike helmet when you ride our bikes. When we ride helmets when we're skating as well. We don't expect to fall. But sometimes we do, and this way we're protected and we don't have to worry because we've got that situation covered. This sort of idea of being prepared is sort of a just-in-case measure that helps you feel safer at a deeper level. You want to emphasize the fact that practicing helps us remember how to do things, and you can connect this to your children's own learning, that they need to practice things over and over again so that they can get them right and feel comfortable with them. And that everybody practices things. The police practice things, the military practices things, your doctor practices things in order to figure out what they're going to do when situations get more difficult. If you practice, then doing the most useful, safest thing is going to become automatic. Now, make sure when you're having this conversation that you're communicating in a relaxed tone. Pay attention to the tone of your voice. You want to feel confident and competent about what you're saying. Kids read our nonverbal cues. They're going to react to your reaction. Think about this in terms of when your child falls, and if you start to tear up and go, "Oh no, oh no, oh no," you're going to potentially send them in the direction of this is the reaction that they should have. This is why with my own kids, we've always emphasized when they fall, we tell them to stand up and shout ta-da and put their arms up in the air like a gymnast at the end of the landing off of some gymnastics equipment. Because in part, if they see us upset and they see us panicking, then the kids are going to say to themselves, wow, this is something really important. And that if mommy or daddy is upset, then I should be upset too. And this is going to hold true for talking about these lockdown drills. If you approach this topic and you're upset and you're angered and you're frustrated and you're thinking about, everything that's gone on with school shootings and the news and gun control and mental health and all of these issues, you're going to have to compartmentalize that a little bit to have this conversation. Your kids are going to be more likely to listen if you are calm. Okay. Next, you want to emphasize to your child that your job in this situation is to listen to the authority figure for safety. And you can compare this to, the directions that you give them to crossing a street. When we tell our kids, when you get to the corner, okay, stop, freeze, wait for us. You might, and we tell you this because you're not going to necessarily see all the cars. You might not have looked around the corner fully. And sometimes there are dangers that the adults know about and that you don't. And by telling you to stop or telling you to hide or telling you to wait until we say something is all clear, that's really important in emphasizing listening to that authority figure. Now, something that's really important is to please use your common sense about how specific to be. You want to avoid euphemisms, avoid talking in code, This feeds into their imagination. I once was involved in a school that would announce that there was a potential security problem by saying that the pink Cadillac was in the parking lot. And from a complexity standpoint for the adults, that was ridiculous, because how do I remember what the pink Cadillac is for? We now recommend in these active shooter situations that don't worry about using your PA system to provide directions or saying where the shooter is in the building. The shooter knows where the shooter is in the building. It's sort of a common sense piece. But in terms of our kids, think about where they are developmentally, what nature of information that they're capable of handling in relation to these kinds of situations. You don't need to go into gory details on this. As you're talking about the unsafe stuff, you want to find that middle ground that's not, you're going to be honest, but not really get to a place where you're striking fear. For older kids, you may want to talk about that fact that sometimes people get angry and they get confused and they end up hurting people because of that anger and that confusion and not being able to deal with it, and encourage them when they're having those kinds of emotions that they need to reach out to people that they trust to be able to share and process them in as best a way as possible. As always, with explaining anything to a child, be ready for their questions. And you want to make sure that they're comfortable asking you questions about anything in life, particularly if it's something that they're concerned or curious about. Try not to meet their questions with resistance or negativity, and just sort of be open to what's going on. And it's okay to say to them, no, I don't know the answer to this. Let me get back to you, and then follow up with them. Shutting them down because they're asking you about questions that they're in an area that we're uncomfortable about or lack knowledge is going to diminish their curiosity and their understanding of the situation. And the more that they understand and have some basic knowledge, the more comfortable they're going to become in the practice of dealing with these lockdown drills. Now, I wanted to share a real simple strategy that Judith Simon Prager, she's a psychologist that's in private practice, has, and I really like this. I wanted to pass this along to everyone. She has an acronym that she suggests that you teach kids, and that acronym is PAL, or PAL. P stands for pause. You want to first pause and take a deep breath, because breathing helps our mind work. And you can take a look at the website, rears.com, for some great breathing exercises. Also, the videos on Facebook have some mindfulness exercises that you can teach your kids to use in these kinds of situations. When we get that oxygen flowing into our brain, it's going to help us cognitively, and we're going to be able better to react to emergency situations, and we're going to allow our rational mind to shift into gear rather than our instincts. So P is for pause. A is for adult. Wherever you are, you need to find that trusted adult. If you're in a classroom, stay there and find your teacher or some other adult in the room. If you're outside, you want to go look for the nearest teacher or nearest adult who can tell you what to do and where to go. And then the L, so we've got P for pause, A for adult, L is for listen. And you want to remind your kids that they should be listening to the adult's instructions. The adult's going to know what's going on, or as much as possible, and is going to tell you what to do. And these shelter in place, these lockdown drills are a little bit more complicated than fire drills, because depending upon where you are in the building or whether or not you're outside is going to dictate going to a different place. But if you listen, your child will be able to figure out and to hear the instructions of what's going on. And when everything is safe, that adult is going to tell you that it's all clear and we can go back to our regular school day. So there it is. P is for pause, A is for adult, L is for listen. The strategy is from Judith Simon Prager, as I mentioned before. I'll put a link up to her materials in the comments. So I know that these situations are going to continue to be stressful for us to see and for us to watch our children go through and have to deal with this within our schools. But we want to make sure that we're addressing their anxiety and that we're making them as comfortable as possible with dealing with this and giving them the tools that they have to be able to keep themselves safe in these situations wherever they are, whether it's school or some other environment. So I encourage you to review that PAL strategy, that PAL strategy with your children. Keep in mind the other suggestions that I've made in terms of how to approach this topic with your child and how to get them better prepared to be addressing these situations. So this has been Dr. Ari Yaris with The Innovative Parent, The Innovative Dad, and please, follow me here on Facebook. Check out the website, www.ariyaris.com. I'm also on Instagram at ariyaris, Twitter at enoparent. You can find me on Pinterest and YouTube as well with these videos if you want to be able to refer back to them at another point. We'll have our next conversation in 2 weeks at this time at 9:30 on Wednesday night. I look forward to chatting with you again then. So until then, happy parenting, and I'll talk to you soon.